So hello, Fishbowl. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Samantha Legeri. I am the marketing manager at the career coaching company WOKEN. So I am here with today's guest, Rachel Serwetz, who is the founder, CEO, and career coach at WOKEN. So we're excited that this is our 9th time speaking on Fishbowl. Yay. And you can follow us by clicking our profiles to be notified of future conversations. But today, we are kicking off our first session in our new Career Living Room series, which focuses on different career topics so that you can get a holistic set of career guidance to ensure you can succeed. So in this session today, we'll review common limiting beliefs, help you analyze which may have impacted you, and teach you how to reframe them for success. So we'll present and interview Rachel for about 40 minutes and then leave it open to the audience for Q&A for about 20 minutes towards the end. So for this, we welcome participation from the audience in two ways. Funny how someone just raised their hand, but hold that thought 1 second. So like I said, this will be towards the end for 20 minutes. So the first way is by raising your hand to join the stage. So there should be a button in the bottom right corner, and I will accept it. But side note, make sure you enable your microphone so we can hear you. Or two, please direct message Rachel your question, and we will keep your name anonymous and answer it that way. Okay, so now we're going to hear a quick introduction into Rachel's background. So Rachel, take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm just going to super quickly tell you who I am. I started out in the corporate world. I was at Goldman Sachs, and then I went to Bridgewater, which is the largest global hedge fund, and I was doing operations, and then I went into the world of HR, and I was actually doing career coaching on the side of my job for years, noticing a lot of patterns and challenges that job seekers were facing. I also did several different, job searches myself. I received career coaching and started to notice that there were some ways that I could even improve on the career coaching that is out there. So I got training through NYU. I got certified through the International Coach Federation. And then I did career coaching through a variety of organizations, including the Flatiron School, WeWorks Outplacement, what else? Columbia University, and a few others. And I've been building my own company for now almost 6 years. I also did a tech MBA at NYU Stern. But essentially, what I've been focusing on the last 6 years through WOKEN and as well as through the other coaching gigs is just simply ensuring that every single professional can be as intentional as humanly possible, right, with every single career step. And there's so much that goes into career steps and career decisions and all of that, there's just simply so much to it. And so, I've been focusing on building tools and coaching frameworks to make sure that you can feel supported and clear and confident with every career step that you are going to take.
Wonderful. Thanks for that background, Rachel. Okay, so let's dive into it. When do you most commonly see hesitations affecting someone's career?
Yes, and so before we dive in, as Sam said, today we're going to focus on the mindset. Now, of course, this is going to be very closely interlinked with decisions that you did make, decisions that you're, wanting to make. I mean, the mindset is the foundation, right? Of course, you've got to be accountable and put in time. And of course, you've got to know how you're approaching things. But sometimes it's conscious or subconscious, how you're feeling, why you're feeling a certain way, and how you're showing up to your career path. So today is focused on that mindset. So I'm going to start by sort of diving into, like Sam said, the common moments that someone may feel a sense of hesitation. So the first thing is choosing a career path. This is the biggest question and one of the most common challenges. It is hard. It is unclear. We, often struggle with figuring out our direction. That's very common. And of course, we can review how to tackle that. But people worry about what are they, what's their potential, what's feasible, what makes sense, what's right for them. And of course, how are you going to know if you like it before you're in it? So there's so many common uncertainties around choosing a direction. The other place I see hesitations is debating upskilling, especially if you're thinking about a bigger program, grad school, something that's costly or time intensive. People, of course, and it makes sense why you would debate, is this the right thing for me? Is this worth my time and money? And why am I even wanting to pursue this? Sometimes upskilling, it's like, it seems like a hot skill that everyone's pursuing, but like, does it make sense for you? So upskilling takes time and money, and we want to make sure we're approaching it for the right reasons. Personal branding is another thing that people sometimes worry about, which is like, how can I portray who I am? How can I be confident in portraying who I am, whether that's on a resume, during networking, during interviewing, on a LinkedIn? Like, how am I coming across? How do I show my brand? And there's such an art to it, right? Somebody might over exaggerate, somebody might undersell themselves. There's so many different ways of showing who you are. And, you don't need to be overconfident, and we don't want to be underconfident. We want to be fair in how can we clearly articulate who you are. And then, of course, your fit with your intended path has to be made clear. So the branding that you give to your own professional brand, right? People can often worry about that. And it makes sense. It's okay to be thoughtful about how am I coming across. We don't want you to overly worry. We want you to spend the right amount of time simply preparing and practicing. And of course, job search and interviewing brings up a lot of hesitations, right? If you need a job quickly, right? That can be a major sort of nerve-wracking situation for all valid reasons. How do we handle rejection, right? How do we deal with interviews when we're nervous? There's so many common feelings during the job search and the interview process. Also, networking can often be, and right now I'm just giving you guys a high-level picture of the common big things, and we're going to dive deeper into each one of them. Networking is another one that people worry about a lot, like asking other people for help can be a sort of a nerve-wracking thing. We can totally help you turn that one around as well. And really just advancement in general, like promoting yourself, maybe asking for a raise, like, what makes sense, and how often and how explicit are you being about promoting all the great things that you're doing? And promotion doesn't just like fall into your lap, right? Like, how are you getting yourself forward? So those are just some of the common buckets where people, may have common, very valid feelings of nerves, hesitations, uncertainties, a lot of mindset components in all of those different buckets.
Exactly. And there's so much. But before we dive into each limiting mindset bucket, let's briefly touch on why they arise and how do you recognize if it's impacting you?
Yes. So this is probably one of the most important things that we'll cover because, I can give you perspective and I can tell you how to reframe some common limiting beliefs, but say you have a limiting belief that's not on our list from today. Your ability to make time to understand your own feelings is half the battle. And of course, the other half is how do you get support to alleviate that feeling or overcome that feeling? But you can utilize coaching, you can utilize meditation or journaling or chatting with a mentor, a peer, even a therapist sometimes for careers. But you just want to make time to actively process, reflect, and try to understand how you're feeling. Because sometimes when we talk about why this arises, it can be subconscious or conscious. And oftentimes our family and just the way we grew up influences how we see the world and how we see ourselves and how we see our professional potential. So make time. This is why I love to focus on the mindset, because it's not just about sitting there and applying to jobs. It's not just about networking. It's not about only the practical elements. You have to understand who you are, how you're showing up, and how that's, I always say your drivers affect your actions, which affect your outcomes, right? So if you're approaching the entire career decision or career path decision from a limiting belief, you have to understand that, because you have to know that your mindset is going to affect you one way or another, right? So make the time to understand what you're feeling, where it came from, and, and then what to do about it, right? And usually these feelings, while they're normal and common to have some of these hesitations, you want to ask yourself, like, where did that come from? So for example, if you're nervous to ask for help, or if you're not sure of your potential, like sometimes these things could have happened when you were 5. And it's like, did someone make you feel that way? Right? Or sometimes we have like a little, PTSD from a previous work situation. Sometimes we have toxic work situations that make you feel hesitant to speak up or ask for help. There's any number of situations that can influence what you feel and why you feel and how you approach the future, but you want to kind of separate and you want to disassociate, because just because you experienced something in the past, if it's holding you back and affecting how you approach people and your own path today, that may or may not be the thing that you really want. So understand what's affecting you, why it showed up for you, and then what to do about it.
Wow, so much great info there. I'm taking notes. Okay, but let's review some of the common limiting mindsets. So we'll answer what are they and how can we reframe them. All right, so the first one up is people often aim for a path that is secure instead of the one they're aligned with. So tell us why that's limiting and how to reframe it.
Yes. So when people are determining what direction to go in for a career, whether they're trying to make a big pivot or whether they're just, figuring out what do you want next, security for jobs obviously is one very large and important component. But when I have seen people pursue a path purely out of the sense of like, oh, this is a secure job, and they sort of ignore like, but what am I like? And what would be suitable for me? And am I going to be good at the job? And am I going to be interested in this job? It doesn't always turn out well if you're only, really thinking about the security. We can think about security, but we can't only consider the security when you're determining what role and what path makes the most sense for you. So just remember that you can think about both what is a secure path and understanding salary that is expected and normal and market rate, but also understanding what is this role and what is the work and what is the day-to-day, and is this aligned? Is this suitable? Am I going to be good at this? Am I going to get great at it? Because is it so secure if you're going to hate it and want to leave? Is it so secure if you're not great at it and maybe have to face, leaving your job? You want to be able to grow and get those promotions and grow as quickly as possible. And there's a lot of statistics around when you're engaged at work and aligned with your work, you will actually grow faster. So you don't have to be a workaholic, but when you're thinking about your path forward, don't only think about security. Think about suitability in terms of the style of the work, and of course, understanding the secure, nature of what do I expect? What salary makes sense, right? So you want to think about all of it, when you're determining your direction.
Wow, 100% agree here. Okay, so next one is, often people tell themselves, I can't achieve or pursue a certain path. So tell us why that's limiting and how to reframe it.
Yes, and so a lot of people come to thinking about different career paths. Like, we often have stereotypes or, assumptions or even reputations that we sort of assign or assume when we think about certain career paths. And then we also sometimes are limited in making a decision about what you can or can't do when it's based on limited information. So that's what you want to avoid, right? You only know if you can do something or want to do something when you are fully informed about what that role really is like and what that path is like, and what is the nuanced reality of how people actually pursue it and how people break in and who gets hired and what do they look for. So just simply make sure you are informed before you decide whether you can or cannot, or whether you want to do something or not, right? So I think sometimes people just rule themselves out of the running before they fully understand what a certain path is all about, essentially.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so now what about limiting yourself based on past experiences? So what's up with that? Why is it limiting and how do you reframe that?
Yeah, and so look, in hiring, we definitely look for like somebody's past experience to inform, what somebody may be capable of doing in a current job or a future job. And so the easiest, fastest way of getting a job is looking at your past roles if you have to prioritize speed. But if you're interested in a new direction and you're interested in pivoting and you're interested in opening yourself up, don't feel that you have to only rely on past experience. Oftentimes your story is so much more important and compelling than just what you've done in the past. For example, if you understand what role you want and you understand what that role really entails and requires and why you're a fit, and you deeply have that understanding, it is going to be a compelling story as to why you're a fit and why should we hire you. So your understanding of your own fit and your own story can be so much more compelling than someone who's just simply qualified on paper, because you're going to have that energy, that understanding, and it's gonna, if it makes sense to you, it's gonna make sense to them, right? And so you just don't want to hold yourself back, especially, a lot of times people from an undergrad perspective will tell me, oh, I'm only looking at this because of my major, right? Wow, if we only limited ourselves based on what we studied for 4 years, right? Like most people, I'm not going to say they don't care about your major, but they want to understand your interest and your fit with the skills, right? And why it makes sense for you to go do this role. That may or may not have anything to do with your major, and it may or may not have anything to do with the roles that you've sort of had in the past, right? So pivoting is very much possible. I've helped people 180 pivot, right? And so if you have an interest and an openness and a desire, and you're open to upskilling, you're open to pursuing a new direction, don't hold yourself back only by what you've done. There's, it's especially these days, organic, little loops and zigs and zags and pivots throughout a career is actually almost expected. And if anything, sometimes it actually helps you because you have such a variety and a breadth of knowledge and different perspective, right? And so that actually can help you versus like, oh, I've only ever done this one thing before. So yeah, bottom line is you don't want to make a decision only based on your past. You want to figure out what makes sense for me. Do I understand that role? Do I understand that path? Am I willing and interested to pursue it? And at least give yourself the benefit of the doubt of at least understanding it before you decide whether you want to go forward. But you don't want to say, oh, I've only ever done this and I can only ever do that, right?
I feel like I'm definitely a person who's had that limiting mindset before. So definitely was paying attention there. And also, I think the next one I've fallen victim to as well. So people often say they're open to anything, quotes. So why is that limiting, and how do you reframe that?
Yes, and it's funny. I was actually just writing a LinkedIn post on this because it's so common that people say I'm open to any job or any industry. Personally, I think that shows that you don't know what you want, right? And so it's a counterintuitive myth. People think if I say I'm open, it's going to open me up to more volume of opportunities. But if anything, it's just confusing to yourself and it's confusing to your listener. You want them to meet you where you're at. You want them to help you to move forward in the direction that you're going. Even if you were to say, I'm considering A, B, C, and D, do you happen to know anybody who does any of those different things? I'm debating which path makes the most sense. At least they know who to introduce you to. So, narrow it down to a few roles and a few industries and then keep narrowing it from there. But if you say I'm open, is that the person they want to hire? Somebody that doesn't really know why they're there? Right? So you do kind of have to figure out your story. Just because you're narrowing your direction doesn't mean you're lessening your opportunity. You can find more volume of the right thing, right? Versus saying, I think people think, oh, I'm open, which means more volume. You can go find more of the right thing that's a little bit more clear and narrow of a direction, right? So you want to separate volume of opportunity versus like how many options or directions am I pursuing at any given one time? It's hard to have a really compelling and authentic story when you show up to interviews and you're like, I have 3 versions of my resume and I have 3 versions of my story. And it's like, you start to become a little like robotic and you're just trying to fit the bill of what they want. But that's not the person who really gets hired, who's like being generic with jargon and being robotic with what you think they want to hear. You need to be really compelling. And so if you have 2 or 3 or 4 different options for directions, compare, contrast, prioritize, and ask yourself, how do those paths differ and which one is the best fit for me, right? And what makes the most sense? And let me go find more of that. Also, when you're job searching for one direction, you're going to learn more nuances about like, what are they really looking for? Let me strengthen my, resume and my story and my upskilling and my fit for that intended direction. So you actually have the better odds of landing it versus if you're in so many different directions, it's hard to find the patterns and the learnings from like what to do better or differently in order to land that thing.
Right, yeah. And I think you had an infographic a little while ago about the whole volume thing as well. So her Instagram is actually a really good source for everything she's saying. Okay, but anyways, on to the next one. So what about people who are trying to interview well? When they think that, what's limiting about it and how do you reframe it?
Yes. So a lot of people, it's kind of similar to what we were just talking about. People think I'm going to show up to an interview and I need to just like check the box and like do a good job. And that is true. But the risk is you're thinking about what they want versus what you want, right? So remember, interviews, first of all, are a choice. Which interviews do you seek out? Which conversations are you having? Interviews are a mirror into the job, right? So what room do you want to be in? Who do you want to be talking to? It is a conversation about problems that you will be solving once hired. So which conversation do you even want to be in versus, sure, you want to show up well, but when you become too focused on like, I'm going to say the things and I'm going to practice the things I'm supposed to say, you start to lose yourself in the job search. And that's kind of, the risk, right? Make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And if anything doesn't make sense to you guys, remember at the end we'll be opening up to you guys for questions. So just keep it on mind, write it down if you need to. Okay, so next one. What about solely focusing on applying to jobs online? What's limiting about that, and how do you reframe it?
Yes. And so applying online is the thing that most people think they're supposed to be doing to job search. It is an unfortunate reality that the job search is broken in the sense that like we have these tools, but unfortunately, statistically, that's really not what lands you a job. And so it's very easy because the job boards make it like, it's almost like social media in the sense of like, you're being given this thing, you're searching through these open roles, scrolling is so easy, scrolling, and then you start applying. But again, statistically, networking is the main way that people land jobs. And so you sort of have to shift your thinking. It's not as natural. You need to sort of adjust and pivot and say, let me protect time to research connections, reach out to connections, host informational chats, get my foot in the door and learn from professionals who are in the roles, in the teams, in the companies, in the industries that you want to go work in. And so that human connection, who's going to hire you? A human is, not a computer. So you need to get in front of these people. And so it's sort of this unfortunate reality that we think we should be able to rely on these online tools and online applications, but unfortunately, they're not the number one most effective thing. So it's a shift in how am I going to spend my time to be most efficient and effective and strategic, and how do I get comfortable with networking in a way that's appropriate and polite and still professional and effective for both parties. So networking takes a little getting used to, but yeah, again, the job search, it just takes a shift in thinking. It's not as natural. It's not as obvious. Like we want to resort to the tool that exists. It's a job search engine, but it's not really your friend in the sense that like, it's not going to be your most productive use of time. I usually say give or take 10 to 20% of your job search time can be those online applications, but at least 50% should be networking, if not more. So it's a shift in thinking, right? It takes a little getting used to. It takes understanding a different approach. But it's limiting because, we want to resort to something that feels easier and simpler. But guess what? How frustrating is it when you spend all the time applying just to get nowhere or to get rejections that don't even make sense, right? You were a fit for that thing and yet we get an auto reject. It's all kind of very broken, unfortunately, right? And so that's kind of why we got to try some different things.
Yeah, I agree. Like at first it seems easy and then you go through the whole process and you get no results and you're like, hey, actually maybe networking would be easier because then you're actually speaking to someone and you're getting somewhere. So
exactly,
100% agree.
Exactly.
All right, so next up. So what about people who look at what everyone else is doing, who might be comparing themselves to others? So what's wrong with that thinking and how do you reframe it?
Yes. And I do have a blog actually on comparing yourself because we all do this as human. I mean, it's almost impossible not to, but it's all about how you react to yourself. So when you notice that you're following somebody that you actually aren't getting good info, like I always say, if you're following somebody, it should be a positive source of inspiration or information. And if it's not, sometimes we follow people and then like subconsciously we think it's like good or entertaining, but really it's like maybe not serving you and it's not motivating to you and it's not helpful to you. So guess what? That unfollow button is your friend. You want to recenter your mind on what am I doing? What is the next step I can take to move myself forward? That's what you want to refocus on. So especially something like LinkedIn, it's so easy to poke around and look at other people's profiles and yada, yada. But just remember, you have no idea what's going on in someone's life. There's such a variety. Like people could say that they have this job title. Who knows what they actually do? Who knows if they're doing well? Who knows anything? So again, if somebody can serve you in terms of positive information or inspiration, then great. But I would lean on others to the extent that they actually help you. And if they're not, just refocus on what can I do right now? What can I do today? What can I do? What is my next step that will move me forward, rather than like, what is this person doing that, you know what I mean? It's, if they can help you, great. And by the way, if you're admiring somebody's profile, maybe chat with them. Maybe they'd be open to chatting with you, right? Make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I do that a lot with LinkedIn, actually. I look at like everyone posting and I'm like, wow, that's a great post, and you try to replicate it. You don't just, get sucked into a wormhole of like envy. But yeah, so I totally agree. So next up, what about operating out of a place of fear and stress? Many of us, I think, experience this. It's just part of life. So what about that, Rachel? How do you reframe it? How do you overcome it?
Yeah. I mean, look, careers are such a big part of our life that it's natural to have the nerves or the fear or the stress. To me, that's just a signal that you care a lot about this one thing and that it's important to you, right? And so I think that's always like a good thing. Like you can recognize, oh, I have some strong feelings because this thing is big and it's important and I care. But I would just try to notice if you have a feeling of fear, uncertainty, stress, anxiety, and just it's all about how it's like that self-talk, right? So you might notice a feeling in your mind or a thought in your mind. How do you like react to your own self, right? So if you have an uncertainty, how can you say, okay, what's something constructive I can do? Is there someone I can learn from? Or maybe I just need a little self-reflection about understanding how I feel. I always say replace fear with learning, right? Can you learn from others or can you learn more about yourself? Is there something constructive you can do as a next step? Because the fear doesn't have to be sort of this end all be all. There's usually a practical, constructive next step you can take that will actually move you forward. If you're like, I don't know what path to pursue, or I'm not, making progress in my job search, or whatever the thing is, what is a next step? Who can help you? Where can you provide, sort of attain a little bit of guidance or support or information or some next step? So I would always just try to translate that feeling into something more productive. Or if you just, need to sit with it, I always say sometimes if you're feeling stressed, just hands off the keys. You don't need to go resort to the job board and be job hopping because you're in a moment of stress. So just try to recognize, do I want to operate right now? And do I want to take a next step when I'm feeling this way? And, or can I use this feeling as an opportunity to figure out what could be a constructive next step? Maybe you just simply take that feeling and take pen to paper and do a little brainstorm, and you do a little bit of a brain dump and you say, here's what I need, right? Like, what if you just write that stuff down? Here's what I need. I need support. I need guidance. I need information. I need structure. I need accountability. There's any number of things you could benefit from to help move you forward. So just remember that that feeling is a moment in time and there's always a way forward. So just try to notice it, use it as an opportunity, decide what type of action would be sort of constructive or healing from it, right? And you don't need to judge yourself or get yourself down because you're feeling that way. Those feelings are just a signal that there's something next you can do to get you to that one step forward.
Definitely agree. And I feel like that kind of leads into the next one I wanted to ask. So a big one is that in job search, people are sometimes in search or I need mode. So they often forget their own value. So how do you overcome this? How do you remember your value?
Yes. Yeah, it's such a good point, right? So job search, it's like, I'm seeking something. I'm seeking a role. I'm seeking their help. I'm seeking their validation. But don't forget that you're still a person. You have skills. You have value. You have creativity. You have such potential. You have affinities and all these great things that, either knowledge and experiences or potential, and both, right? You have strengths. And so I love to do a little upskilling during my job search. Like, can you do some sort of project? Can you write a blog? Can you create some video? Can you create content? Or, can you just dive into the job that you want? Like, say you're looking for data analyst roles, like go get some open source data and make a dashboard out of it, or do some analysis. Like, do the job you want to be doing, even if no one's hired you to do it. Find a project, do pro bono, do some freelance, throw your profile up on Upwork and see if you can get a small project. There are so many ways to sort of get your hands dirty, whether it's something you create, somebody you support, maybe pro bono, somebody you learn from. It could be a course, a certification, a boot camp. Doing something productive and creative, it also gives you the choice and the opportunity to ask yourself, what do I actually want to learn? What do I want to do if I had the choice? That's a beautiful thing, because the minute you're in a job, somebody's going to be asking you to do something. So your ability to ask yourself, what would I want to do in a hands-on way when I actually have the chance and the choice, is such a beautiful reminder of maybe what job should I go look for. So doing something productive, a project, something creative, is a great way to remember, who you are, your sense of professionalism, your sense of productivity, your sense of creativity. And if you're doing job search on the side of a job, it's a little easier because, you are being, tapped for your skills still every single day. So that's sort of lesser. But sometimes when you're full-time job searching, that's when you start to really feel like, I'm constantly in need of them. Is anyone in need of me? And what is the value I can offer? But don't forget, just because you're not like, quote unquote, being hired or paid to do something right now, doesn't mean you're, at a loss of the value you have or could offer. So just remember that feeling naturally, it sort of slips away, right? When we're not in a full-time job, but it doesn't have to. So you sort of have to do a little bit of stuff to remind yourself of it, or to bring that feeling back around and make that a part of your week. Make your week still productive. It doesn't have to be applying all day, every day, right?
Agree. And also a little tip that I usually do, sometimes if I don't have the time to do like upscaling, I ask other people for feedback, whether it's like a past employer or a volunteering opportunity. Sometimes just hearing other people like, confirm that I have value really helps me, get out, get out of my own head.
Oh yeah, I love that. That's a great point. And if you're having any impostery feelings, which is also such a big common, thought and feeling, asking others like, what do you think I did well? What do you think I need to work on? Because imposter feeling is another really common limiting belief. But let's think of it this way, right? You can either be overconfident, you can be underconfident. Our goal is for you to see yourself objectively and fairly. We're all great at some things, we're all good at some things, and we're all bad at some things. It's just a matter of like where you stand on all the different skills and mapping those out. And then when you sort of can paint that picture, it becomes easier to say, okay, I'm great at this, and here's what I'm going to talk about when I talk about my strengths, but here's what I'm going to go work on. And that way, imposter to me, it's kind of like either you don't understand the role you want and you don't understand what's a fit for you, or you might just be overly down on yourself because, again, it's usually a natural mix of I'm good at, I'm great at, I'm not great at, or I don't want to get great at that thing. And so just sort of making sense of where all the skills stand for you.
100%. I love combining those two. Okay, so next one. Often family and friends have an influence on our career choices. So how can this hold people back, and how do you overcome it?
Yes. I think it's sort of an age-old thing where people lean on family and friends as each other's career coaches. And we actually forget that career coaches are real people. We are here to be objective. So I would be by the way, for careers or just in general, be wary of who do you ask their opinion, right? That's one of the most important things. Who do I ask for their help? Who do I ask for their opinion? And is that the right person to be asking their opinion? Do they know what they're talking about, right? And so sometimes a friend can be good because they see you really clearly, but do they have the information on the careers? Maybe, maybe not, right? So it depends why you're going to somebody for what and who makes sense to go to. Maybe you just need some moral support. Sometimes during job search, friends should just be there to make sure you have a good time. And on the weekend, you can actually like sort of unravel and unload and actually just have fun and take a break. To me, that's what friends are there for. A little bit moral support, a little bit of having fun, sort of letting off some steam. Family too can be support, but you need to know who should I go to when and for what, and who should I not entertain these conversations with. I think parents or even our partners often want the best for us, but that doesn't mean that they actually know how to guide your career choices. So I would keep that in mind, essentially, right? So this isn't exactly the answer per se, because, it is possible that a family or friend could help you, but I would just ask yourself, who do I want to bring into this, when and why, and in what capacity? Is somebody actually helpful to me or not, right? And it's okay if family and friends are just your personal support system for moral support. They don't have to be your career coach. Like, we are here with real frameworks to help you do the best thing for yourself, right? They may want the best for you, but they don't always sometimes have advice that actually lines up with that, right? And there's no reason why they should, because, it's like a financial advisor. You wouldn't just go invest based on like your friend who has no idea in the markets. You would go to somebody that understands how to invest. It's the same thing with career coaches. We just sort of forget that career coaches exist. And so we go to each other. And it's okay if they're actually supporting you, but just remember, like, there are places and people and ways and resources to find the effective support that you need.
Yep, totally agree. Okay, so I'm going to squeeze in one last question here before we get into Q&A. So that is returning to networking. So it's important to do this for job search and career exploration, like you said, but people find it hard or uncomfortable to ask others for help. So help us. How do you overcome that?
So, part of it, as I mentioned, is asking yourself, like, is there a reason why you don't feel comfortable asking for help? Did someone ever make you feel that it's not okay to ask for help, right? Sometimes it's a really deep reflection that you have to do, number one. Number two is perspective. Networking is normal. It is common. It is standard from professional to professional, right? We all help each other. You might be asking them for help, but guess what? They know that they're building a relationship with you, and maybe one day they're going to ask you for help. You can still provide them with knowledge and open up your network to them. So it is always a two-way street. Also, I would just remember that people like to talk about themselves. They like to help you. They like to give information, and that is something they can do. You may not have to ask for a job, but can you hop on a call and get some information and spend 95% of that call learning? And then maybe at the end of the call, you assess whether there's some opportunities or next steps or things that make sense. But when the bulk of that phone call, it's almost, you want to think about networking like, imagine you're at a conference and you're chatting with a colleague who's sitting next to you at the conference. What would you talk about? You would be talking shop, right? It's not like you're fully asking them for like help or even a referral per se. You're actually building knowledge. You're actually asking good learning questions. By way of what you ask, they're going to get to know how great you are. And so the beautiful thing is you're getting the foot in the door. You're introducing yourself. You're learning more about them and their organization. You're learning if you even want to work there. You're also learning what the roles in the teams are that you want to maybe work at within their organization. And then by the end of the call, it's actually going to be clear to both of you what next step makes sense. And maybe they naturally want to make an introduction for you that it makes sense based on your background and your interests professionally, right? So make it natural. There's a way of making it productive for everyone. People generally want to help. And by the way, the worst case scenario is somebody doesn't answer, or they say they're too busy, or they say, they don't have anyone in mind for you to connect with. You might be asking them for an introduction or an informational chat, but I would say give or take 50% of people will respond. Now, keep in mind, you want to have a really good, clear outreach message, and don't be just copying and pasting. Really be authentic, be clear, be robust, and try to find a way that you write a message that resonates with somebody about like, why should they pick up the phone and chat with you for 20 minutes. Put a tiny bit of time into who is the right person, what should I ask them for, and how can I make this phone call go really well and make it quality over quantity. And then I find usually preparing for the process actually makes you more comfortable, because when you just assume you're uncomfortable, it's like, but do you really even know what this process is all about? And when you start to inch forward and figure out who do I want to talk to and what might I ask, and maybe I prepare a few questions, you're going to realize, okay, maybe this isn't the most unreasonable thing in the world, right?
Yep, totally agree. And that was right on time. We hit the 40-minute mark. So thank you for all that advice, Rachel. So this is just a snippet of what she and WOKEN can help you with. So before we open it up to Q&A for the audience, Rachel, can you tell us one more time about what WOKEN does in case anyone would like more assistance?
Yes. And we do a ton of these free events, by the way. So on IamWoken.com, we have a lot of free resources, and we always want to help career-wise, no matter how we can help you. But essentially, we are here to help you with all of these topics, your mindset, your accountability, and the practical efforts, whether you're clarifying your direction, upskilling, branding, job searching, networking, interviewing, advancement, promotion, you name it. We're here to help and simply make sure you feel supported and intentional with every single career step. So we're here, and we'll be back every 2 weeks on Fishbowl. And I think we are good for some Q&A at this point. So please let us know if you have questions, and either raise your hand or you could message me in a DM, and I'd love to see what we didn't answer today. And that could really be about anything career-wise. I mean, today is somewhat focused on the mindset, but feel free to let me know, what's getting in your way, and we'll see if we can help. And in the meantime, we could keep ripping on hopefully some helpful topics, but feel free to raise your hand, and we'd love to answer some questions.
Yes, definitely. So I already got one, but just in the future, you guys, please DM Rachel. But okay, so here's our first question. How do you advocate for advancement for yourself and get what you need when you are a part of the minority group and the environment or influencer leaders tend to be more favorable to people who are, quote, are like them or look like them? So heavy topic here.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming this person might be referring to like within the workplace. It sounds like, maybe your boss or those senior to you are not being the most inclusive. And obviously that's an unfortunate situation. And we hope that every manager and leader is trying to understand who it is that they're managing and be open and be supportive of every single individual in their development. That is our goal. Now, unfortunately, not every single manager or leader acts that way. What I would say is this is what you call sort of managing up, right? And so you want to manage your growth. You want to get your managers help to make sure that you can grow. And so when you're talking about advancement or promotion, you want to have explicit, frequent, proactive, and comprehensive conversations as it relates to what are your goals? What does it take for you to reach the next level? And what do they need to see from you? So remember, frequent, proactive, explicit, and comprehensive. What that means is if you say to your manager, what do you need to see from me to reach the next level? You want to make sure that that conversation becomes super, super, super clear. Don't let them just give you fluffy feedback. Oh, I need to see that you could be a better communicator. Okay, what about communication? Is it during a meeting? Is it with the team? Is it this? Is it in writing? Is it during presentation? So get really clear on the feedback and then make sure it's comprehensive. You could say like, what else? What else? What else do you need? Until they finally say, nothing, basically, right? And they say, oh, that's everything. Then you document all your goals, and then you want to check in and actually work on those goals, and you want to showcase that you are literally improving in each of the areas. You can also do what I love to do is a creative, like do a one-pager and send that as like a PDF like once a month to both, it could be your manager as well as maybe one or two folks above you. And that shows that it's like, here are the goals we set for me. Here's what I'm doing against it. And if you send that every single month and you have a conversation about it, it becomes like a no-brainer. You want to make it so there's no surprises by the time it comes time for performance review, right? So you're the one facilitating. You're the one bringing up the conversation. Of course, they have to participate. But if you're making sure that the conversation's comprehensive, you're making sure the goals are comprehensive, you're making sure you're working on those goals and you're promoting how you're working on those goals, it should be clear as day, especially if you're doing this 12 months in advance. You really want to do this the year before performance reviews. And if you do it every single month up till the time of, when it becomes time for promotion, hopefully then by that point, it's a no-brainer. So that's kind of what you're doing when you're managing up, is putting everything sort of in your own hands. You include these people in the conversation, but you're kind of, I don't want to say you're shoving it in their face, but you're making it clear. You're saying, here's what I'm doing. And here's the proof that it shows that I'm advancing on this goal. And eventually, what does it look like for you to have met that goal? That should be super clear as well, right? So this is sort of a typical, goal setting type of a conversation. I'm not really touching on the whole kind of here's who looks like me type of a question, but I personally think when you're in a situation, if you feel like somebody's not being inclusive towards you, you want them to focus on your value and your skills more than anything else, right? So that's kind of why I like to just direct everybody's energy to like, here's my impact, here's my performance, here's my growth, here's how I'm working on the goals and the feedback, and like bring back the conversation to like all those important things about, what you're doing in the workplace, right? Etc. Right? That, to me, that's kind of your best weapon, let's say, right? I hope I'm answering your question. But please let me know if there's follow-ups. And yeah, we're still open to follow-up questions. Sam, I don't know if you got any new ones in your DMs.
No, that's it for right now, guys. But please DM Rachel or raise your hand. Oh, look, we have a speaker. I'll invite you up. Okay, we just sent you an invitation to speak. So please ask your question.
Hey,
hi,
Pradeep, are you there? Oh, we can hear you. Yep.
No, that was me. I was just asking if you can hear us.
All right. Let's see, Pradeep. I don't think we can hear you. You can also DM us the question.
Yes, or feel free, just for everyone, make sure your settings you have enabled your microphone, because that's also a common source.
Cool. All right. Well, Pradeep, let us know if you managed to fix it. If not, please send us a message. Anyone?
I think I fixed
there we go. Yes.
Really sorry about that. Rachel, really happy to be here. I think all the information presented is really great. I'm really enjoying being here. I'm actually in the career search process. I left my position to kind of take some personal time off about a year and a half ago. I decided I didn't want to do this alone, so I did hire a career coaching company. They're helping me with the entire process, but I don't feel comfortable working with them in the sense I feel like I may not have picked the right provider, but I've already sort of kind of gone all in. And right now I'm in the process where I've fixed my LinkedIn profile and prepared the resume and we're applying for positions. Is there any suggestions you might have for me? I know I haven't really given you any specifics. I could mention the company's name, but I don't know if that's appropriate.
Oh, you don't have to, but are you asking how to make the most of the program, or are you like, what can I answer for you?
I guess I feel like I don't know if what they're telling me is correct, and if the way that I'm going about. Well, for example, to fix my resume, they gave me a sample resume, and they said, "Here it is. Do you think this is correct?" And I basically went about and either saying, "Hey, this bullet point could work with my resume or my experience or not," or me actually going in and saying, "Hey, this is complete baloney, and I can't have this on my resume." And I just didn't feel that was very authentic. And I'm not necessarily sending them communication, saying, having questions and things like that, but I don't always get answers. And I did look at reviews of this company through the traditional media, and it had good reviews, but then actually went to Reddit, and I heard people were saying, "Hey, it's not the best company."
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, unfortunately, career coaching gets a bit of a bad rap because there's so much mixed stuff out there. So it's a really good point and it's a really good question. And sometimes in life, this just happens. You might pick someone to help you, and we don't always know sometimes until we try. So you looked into it. You're there now. I mean, I would see, I don't know how long ago you started and if they're willing to give you a refund. Sometimes you can ask if you really don't feel like you're, benefiting. But if not, just get the most out of it. Now, if you're sort of concerned that something doesn't actually feel right, of course you don't have to follow it. I recognize there's a balance of how do I get the most of this? But if they're helping you in a way that doesn't resonate, you could just say I don't want to do the resume with you. Can you help me with the LinkedIn, right? So take what you can from them that feels helpful. And I think there is a balance of going with your gut versus maybe you don't know what makes sense to do for resume editing, right? And there's no reason why you should. But if it doesn't feel good or helpful, I think it's okay for you to listen to yourself. Now, look, if it's a sunk cost and you already paid and you can't get your money back, that it still doesn't mean you have to go finish the resume with them if it's not helpful. If you feel like it's not coming across as the edits are really strong or authentic, or that the resume is not coming across well, why push forward, right? So I think you want to look at your time. And if there's any time going into working with them and you don't like what's coming of it, then don't work on those things. See what I would take as much as you can, right? So do they have guidance on job search or networking or like whatever you can pull and squeeze from this? I would. And if there's something you're really not vibing with, I would just like kind of forget about it. And like, I know that's annoying because you might need to find help elsewhere, but there's no use in pushing forward if it's not, something you're really thrilled with. It sounds like the way they were helping you with resume was like showing you some bullets and asking you what makes sense. I don't personally do it that way. Like I would help somebody to say, here's some best practices. Here's how you write resumes. I personally would want a client to write the resume themselves with the guidance in mind. And then of course I would edit that. But if somebody's sort of writing it for you, I mean, there's a lot of resume writers that exist. So, but you would have to go with one that helps, knows how to do it effectively, that it's accurate and it's your voice and it makes sense. So I'm not sort of knocking all resume writing, but the process has to be such that it will come out authentically. If they're like producing bullets for you and you're reading it and it's like not working, right? I personally think that the human should come first. You should write it and then somebody can help edit and say, does this make sense to me? Here's how I would strengthen it. Here's my comments. Here's my questions. Here's what doesn't make sense to me. Here's how we can say this better or differently. Or here's what you're missing. Do it metrics, this, that, and the other thing, right? So kind of a very traditional, like you write it, someone reviews it, fresh eyes, edit, comment, suggest, strengthen it, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, that it's done, right? That's kind of how I like to do it. And then periodically, incrementally, you can edit your resume, once a week or once every 2 weeks. Like I don't like to spend all day, all hours of the day editing a resume. I like to say, get a strong version in line with your direction. And then periodically in the job search, as you notice keywords that you're missing, you work that back into your resume, because otherwise people just are so comfortable being in the resume all day, every day, because it's like, it just feels like this never ending thing. And it's a lot easier to be behind the screen and not do networking. But like, if you're editing your resume for hours, you're not meeting someone. You need to be out there meeting somebody. And there is a good enough with the resume. And then incrementally you'll improve it over time.
Well, that's very helpful. You're kind of like speaking for the voice in my head, like my gut was kind of feeling the way along the lines of what you were saying. That's helpful. I guess I'm just going to go along with it, make the best that I can. The process hopefully should finish quickly, and then I can take it from there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me know if you want to revisit other formats of support after your program finishes up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know it's a tough one out there. Yeah, sorry, Sam, you saw another question?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, and anyone listening, if you ever have like more questions for Rachel, like please feel free to ask now. We still have 6 minutes left, so we have time to get in any last minute ones.
Yeah, we're here. We're here to help however we can. Anyone else? Questions, concerns, challenges, struggles, comments, thoughts? Let's see. Oh, I got a message. Okay. I'm in a career search. I've had success getting interviews. They go well, and I've made it to multiple final rounds between me and another candidate, but I haven't gotten the gig. Wonder what you tell people when they go through this. Where do you start to fix the issue? So that's a great question. So if you're getting interviews but no offers, usually it's how you're communicating and articulating your fit. And probably needing to do some mock interviews to understand how are you coming across. Are you being clear? Are you telling stories well? Are you making it clear that you've done these different things before in a different capacity? How are you answering the common questions, right? Are you speaking too long, too short? Is the point coming across that you need to get across? Or is it the right role for you? Now, sometimes there's patterns and sometimes there's no pattern. So for example, maybe one company is just the wrong culture fit, and maybe one company they went with a different internal candidate, or maybe one company they went with somebody with more industry experience. It could be any number of things, but you want to ask yourself, is it a varied reason, or is there any patterns that I can learn from? And sometimes you can really just use your self-awareness, because oftentimes we know what's going on more than we think we do. I actually have on my website a downloadable guide of about 25 reflection questions you can ask yourself after interviews to try to facilitate your thinking around, like, what could it be? What could be going wrong, right? And again, sometimes it's totally out of your control, but all we can do is say, what is in my control and what can I grow and adjust and adapt and, practice and things like that. So usually it's how you're coming across, communicating your fit, your skills, could be your energy, your tone. It's anything around the conversation itself. Or it could be like, is this really the right role for you? But if you've made it to a lot of final rounds, I mean, that of course is a promising thing. So you want to look at, like, is there varied reasoning, or is there any patterns I can learn from? And it could just be as simple as doing some mock interviews, because if you haven't had anyone listen to how you interview, it's like the resume. You want a pair of fresh eyes. Does this make sense what I'm saying? I mean, it's hard to explain stories that happened at a different company when somebody wasn't there. Like, am I telling this well, right? Am I coming across? Am I getting the point across? And there's different ways, there's a lot of different things that could trip someone up during an interview process. So practicing that usually helps. And just a little self-reflection. And also you can ask for feedback. It's not everyone will give you that feedback, but I like to write a really specific email template, and I like to, ask for a 5-minute phone call and see if they're willing to tell you, like, was it my culture fit? Was it some skills that I'm missing? Was it industry experience? Was it something else? And just really see if there's any insight they're willing to give you. And sometimes if it's a 5-minute phone call, they're more willing to share that with you than via email. So you want to do what you can to see if anyone's willing to share that with you.
Yes, I love that advice about, like, the feedback. I feel like that'd be really helpful, because you can always take what they're saying and then improve on it. So I feel like it'll progress you very well. All right, so since we only have a few minutes left in the conversation, I'm going to share where people can find me, and then Rachel will share how you can find her and WOKEN. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn by searching Samantha Legere. You can also follow my profile here. And Rachel, where can people connect with you in WOKEN?
Yes, we are pretty much everywhere on different socials. LinkedIn is definitely the big one, so please find my name on LinkedIn. I always try to post good things on there. Our website is imwoken.com. We always offer a free initial chat if you want to discuss your career. And then, of course, we're on, TikTok, Instagram, you name it, all the different things. And if you follow our emails, you'll always be notified of different upcoming workshops. So find me, stay in touch. I love to help. If there's something you want to hear, if you want to have a blog about something, whatever you're facing, if there isn't a resource already for it, I'm happy to create a video, talk about it. I want to help with all the common challenges that you may be facing. So stay in touch, and we will be back. So on Fishbowl, this is part of a series. We talked about the mindset today. In the upcoming events, we're going to talk about accountability, and we're going to get really deep into all the different practical strategies, whether it's career exploration and career path clarity, whether it's upskilling, networking, job searching, interviewing, you name it. It's all to come. So stick around, and hopefully we will see you again.
Yes, thank you so much. This is the end of our discussion. Thank you all for joining. And yeah, just follow our profiles, and we'll see you next time. September 17th is our next one at 3 p.m. So we'll see you there. Bye, everyone.
Bye.